All right, let's jump in. Today, we're going to look at a text that a lot of us feel like we already know pretty well, the New Testament. But we're going to come at it from a totally different angle, one you probably haven't thought much about: the actual original language it was written in. When we think about holy books or sacred writings, we kind of have this built-in assumption, don't we? We picture this very formal, very grand, majestic language. Something that sounds ceremonial and set apart from our normal everyday chatter. So here's the big question. Does the New Testament actually fit that mold? Was it really written in that lofty, high and mighty style? Well, the answer is a definite no. And honestly, it kind of changes everything. Get this. It was written in street language. Seriously, the original Greek of the New Testament wasn't the fancy talk of philosophers or the official language of emperors. Nope. It was the common, everyday language of the people. Just let that sink in for a second. So what do we even mean by street language? Well, think about how you talk when you're not trying to impress anyone. We're talking about the language people use to write shopping lists, to dash off a quick note to family, or to yell at their kids on the playground. It was the real, unpolished, get your hands dirty language of actual life. Now, to really get why the language is so important, you first have to understand how the New Testament even came to be. This was not some big, planned-out academic project. It was something way more organic. You could even say spontaneous. In fact, one writer calls the whole process haphazard. I love that word for it, because for about 50 years, you just had different people in different places writing things down. Eyewitness accounts, personal letters, a crazy vision. There was no committee overseeing it all, no grand strategy. It was a totally grassroots collection of writings. And when you look at that whole haphazard collection, it really just boils down to three main types of writing. That's it, 3. And here they are. You've got 5 eyewitness stories, what we now call the Gospels and the Book of Acts. Then you have the bulk of the collection, 21 personal letters written to real people and small communities dealing with real problems. And to top it all off, you have one wild, visionary poem, which we know as the Book of Revelation. That's the whole shebang: stories, letters, and a poem. Okay, to truly appreciate how radical this is, we've got to do a little time traveling. Back in the 1st century, there wasn't just one type of Greek language floating around. There were basically 2 versions, and they were used for completely different things. So on one side, you had the formal academic Greek. This was the language for things that were meant to last: big philosophical ideas, official histories, epic poems. It was precise, learned, and written for the ages. But then you had the other Greek, the common, informal street language, the language of business deals, family gossip, and paying your bills. And the New Testament? It was written without a doubt in that second category, the language of everyday people. So we've established what kind of language it was, but the real mind-blowing part is the why. Why on earth would a collection of writings about God be written in the slang of the marketplace? Well, it turns out the language itself is a huge part of the message. Think about it. This choice of language perfectly mirrors the guy at the center of the whole story, Jesus. I mean, his whole style was telling down-to-earth stories that anyone could understand, and he was constantly hanging out with regular, ordinary people. The simple, accessible language of the writings isn't a bug, it's a feature. It's a direct reflection of that same spirit. And this quote just nails it. The core idea isn't that we have to climb some spiritual ladder, learn a secret holy language, and make ourselves presentable for God. The message is the exact opposite. It's that God comes down to us, right into the middle of our messy, complicated, everyday lives. And what better way to communicate that than in the language of our actual lives? Okay, so what does all of this ancient history mean for us today? Well, it completely changes the job description for a modern translator. Their task is way more complex than just swapping Greek words for English ones. See, a truly faithful translation isn't just about being literally correct. It's about capturing the vibe of the original. The real goal is to find the modern-day equivalent of that 1st century street language. It's about translating the tone, the energy, and the big ideas into a form that connects with how we actually think and speak right now. The author of our source material, who was a pastor for over 30 years, talks about this beautifully. He says he pictures himself standing at a border, with the ancient world on one side and a modern person on the other. And his job is to be that bridge, to find just the right words to bring the message across so it makes sense in a hospital room or in a kitchen or in a parking lot. It's all about bringing the message onto your street. And that kind of leaves us with one last big idea to chew on. We've just seen how using simple, common language fundamentally shaped one of the most influential collections of writings in human history. So it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How does the language that we use every single day, the words we choose at work, with our families, even in our own heads, how does that language end up shaping the very ideas we believe to be true?